You're watching Inside Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick.
Hey everyone, Jim Fitzpatrick. Thanks so much for joining me this morning on another edition of Inside Automotive right here at the CBT Automotive Network. The California New Car Dealers Association has filed a lawsuit against Volkswagen and its affiliate Scout Motors. Brian Maas, the president of the California New Car Dealers Association, joins us now to share what's going on with this lawsuit. So Brian, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us on the show. I want to say congratulations on the lawsuit. I know that legals, all the legalese and lawsuits are not always fun, but you're fighting the good fight for the dealers there in California. And really, in this case, maybe even nationwide, right? Because I think all eyes are on this case.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jim. Yeah. This is a circumstance where, Scout is trying to sell its vehicles directly, even though they've got franchise dealers in the VW network who would love to sell those vehicles.
Yep.
And that clearly violates California law. So that's why we filed suit.
It's amazing that a company like that, doesn't do all of the due diligence and talk to the dealers and talk to you and say, if we do this, what are your intentions? Obviously, you're going to sue. If there is case law there and there are laws in place, then why take on the aggravation if you're Scout Motors or you're VW, right?
Yeah, I can't speak to what their motivation is. VinFast had a direct model and they just switched to franchise dealers. Polestar did the same thing.
Yeah.
So there are lots of folks who are making the other decision. What's especially puzzling and troubling about VW and Scout is when we made modifications to our franchise law in 2023, VW and Scout opposed those modifications. We took amendments partly in response to their concerns. They asked the governor to veto the bill, and they said in a letter, and we cite this in our lawsuit, that it would not allow them to sell directly in California, yet they proceeded apace and in October of last year made their announcement that they were going to sell direct and started taking reservations.
Right.
So we felt we had no choice ultimately but to sue them.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And have you gotten a response or an explanation from VW on it?
Not so far. Some of their public statements are, we won't be bullied and we disagree with the interpretation of the law. The irony is the same counsel that issued that opinion was the same one who said it would prevent them from selling directly in a letter to the legislature during the legislative deliberations in 2023. So Is it the 2023 version or the 2025 version?
Right.
It's pretty unclear.
That's incredible. And of course, you've got the support of all of the VW dealers behind you and there in California to do just this. No dealer wants to take this on, or maybe, well, I guess they could afford it if they, in most cases right now, but it's a huge expense, and but they don't want to take on, no dealer wants to take on their OEM, right?
Yeah, these are their business partners who they rely 100% on their new vehicle inventory from the manufacturer. Rarely do dealers take on their OEM for just that reason.
Right.
And in this case, we felt it was important for us to not just represent VW dealers or Audi or Porsche dealers as part of the VW family, but all dealers. If Scout in VW can get away with this, what about Sony Honda? Yeah. What about some other OEM trying to do something similar? And we've got a lot of support from NADA. Some of their public statements have been very clear that they're not going to stand for this. And about the Florida lawsuit where VW dealers have filed. So there are a lot of other associations that are looking at doing their own challenges. And I think everybody's pretty consistent. This is a bridge too far. They can't do this, and we're not going to stand for it.
Yeah, there's no question. And everybody, I guess, points to that these brands that want to sell direct point to Tesla and go, well, they can do it, right? And again, Tesla isn't a legacy brand, and I'm sure that Scout's argument is, well, we're not a legacy brand either. We're kind of a spin-off, or we're a division of. Is that their argument?
Yeah, there's a couple arguments that they make. They say that we're not a legacy brand, except if you're old enough, you remember International Harvester, and that was the Scout brand. So it actually is a legacy brand.
That's right.
That's why VW bought it, is because it has some recognition.
That's right.
In the marketplace. But that's not really the gravamen of this thing. Yeah, sure, they want to sell direct because they think they can get, Tesla's stock value. But the issue here in our lawsuit in particular is it's the competition aspect.
Mm-hmm.
VW has franchisees. They should use their franchisees to retail vehicles just as they do all their VWs, just as they do all their Porsches,
100%.
Just as they do all their Audis. The fact that they're choosing, well, the Scout vehicles, we're just going to sell those directly. Taken to its logical conclusion, they could decide to keep for themselves all the best sellers and only allocate the turkeys to dealers. That's not appropriate. Dealers should have access to every vehicle that an OEM produces, who are their franchise business partners.
Right. What's the next step in this legal process?
So, we expect VW Scout to answer our complaint.
Mm-hmm.
We filed in San Diego Superior Court. That was the venue we chose to file. And, we expect to hear some kind of response or reply from VW in the coming weeks.
Yeah. I think under law, they've got 20 days or something, right? Or 30 days or something like that to respond in some way. Right.
Yeah. And whether they respond in the press or they respond formally in the litigation, they're going to have to respond.
Right.
And we'll proceed apace from there. We think we have absolutely solid ground to stand on. And one unique feature of our suit is we sued them for false advertising, because if you're illegally advertising, there are statutory penalties that attach for up to $2,500 per violation.
Okay.
So depending on how many Californians have reserved Scout vehicles, and obviously we'll find that out as part of the litigation, they could pay $2,500 per individual.
Wow.
In a fine to the state. So the financial penalties could total in the millions of dollars.
Wow. An unrelated or related topic, how are EV sales in the state currently?
So we've pretty much plateaued over the last 2 years.
Okay.
The OEMs that our dealers represent are continuing to sell more EVs, and Tesla continues to sell less.
Okay.
Their market share has declined. They're now under 50% of the EV market in California, which hasn't happened in well over a decade.
Yeah. What was their high water mark? What was their percentage wise? It's at 50.
Oh, they were probably, and I don't have the data in front of me, but they were probably 70-80% of the EV market at one point.
That's quite a drop.
They've dropped 6 consecutive quarters in California, and it's reflective of their frankly relatively stale product. They rely on the Model 3 and the Model Y.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The pricing difficulties with EVs generally, and then on top is Mr. Musk's political controversies.
Right. That people are just kind of, especially in California, not as many Trump fans in California as there are on the East Coast, perhaps, but nevertheless,
especially among Tesla buyers, there's probably not a ton of Tesla buyers, maybe with the exception of some Cybertruck purchasers, who are also Trump fans.
Yeah, for sure. Not to get too much into the weeds on all of that's going on from DC, but how are sales in the state overall, auto sales? I know that we finished a great couple of weeks in March, but here we are at the end of April now. What do things look like?
Yeah, our first quarter numbers, we publish a quarterly auto outlook. It's available on our website. Sales were up substantially in the first quarter. it's not clear whether some of that was pull forward
Hmm.
in light of announcements of tariffs and other things that might be happening in the vehicle market,
Right.
or whether that's a consistent trend that's going to last through April and May.
Okay.
So we'll have to see what the data bears out in the coming weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. Is the selling season for you guys in California the same as it is the rest of the country? Because I mean, it's always 72 and sunny out there. So
It's pretty much year round in California,
right.
except for certain markets up in the Sierra Nevadas.
Sure.
So we're not like some of the folks on the Eastern
Yeah.
Seaboard where they're not really selling in
Right.
winter. Consumers are still buying cars in the winter in California.
That's right. Hey, before I let you go, what else is on the to-do list for this year for the association?
So our number one issue, we could probably devote a whole program to this, is the impact of the zero emission vehicle mandate
Yeah, that's big.
in California.
That's huge.
The manufacturers our dealers represent have to achieve 35% zero emission vehicle penetration for the 2026 model year.
Wow.
None of those manufacturers are going to make it.
Wow.
And the challenge there is the manufacturers have told our dealers they're going to restrict inventory in order to comply. Because if you have to hit 35% and you're only selling, say, 10 to 20% EVs, you're going to reduce the number of cars you provide to dealers until you hit that 35% number.
Right.
So the impact on consumers, lack of availability of vehicles, the necessity to go to Arizona and Nevada to find the ones they're looking for, the loss of state and local sales tax revenue.
Yeah.
It's severe. So we've spent the last few months with a public affairs campaign. It's called Calibrate. We're asking the Air Resources Board to pause enforcement of the rule until they can make changes to have it match the market. And we've devoted a website that's got all kinds of details about why the rule isn't going to work. That's found at calibrateca.org.
Okay. Yeah, we'll show all the information on the screen here for dealers to visit it. And that's a state. That's a state agency, right? That's putting that in place.
But 11 other states follow the CARB's ZEV rules.
Right.
So a bunch on the Eastern Seaboard, Washington, Oregon, Colorado, they follow California's rules. It's close to 40% of the vehicle market nationally are going to be impacted. And if California isn't going to make 35%. You can bet that New Mexico is not going to make 35%.
That's right. That's right. Wow, that is absolutely crazy, and and I guess it's all up to the governor of these states, right, as to whether or not the governor's got.
We're a little different in California. It's a California rule ostensibly drafted for Californians by the California Air Resources Board. So CARB has the ability to pause enforcement of the rule. They've paused enforcement of other rules in the past. And we're just asking them, don't trash the rule. Don't trash the goal of moving toward zero emission vehicles.
Right.
But recalibrate the rule so it more closely resembles the actual market for zero emission vehicles in our state. Yeah.
Just be realistic about it. Give the dealers a little bit of or the manufacturers especially, a little bit of a break on this, and make it livable. Where you can, to your point, where you can have it, but those demands are crazy.
Yeah, it's just not realistic, and the demands increase 8% a year until we get to 2035 when it's supposed to be 100%.
Wow.
So even if by some miracle a manufacturer makes it to 35% for the 26 model year, they got to hit 43 in 27 and 51 in 28.
That's crazy.
There's just not the support for that. Then you layer on top all the controversy that's happening in Washington about the rumors of lost zero emission vehicle tax credits or tariffs or all these other things. It just adds more uncertainty in the market, and nobody's going to buy an EV if they're uncertain.
That's right. Boy, there's no question about it. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule. Obviously, you're a very busy guy these days, and we appreciate you taking the time. But I'd love to do a follow-up with you to see how this lawsuit's moving along, because I know that all eyes are on California now as you guys fight this very unfortunate situation with Scout. And so good luck to you on that. And I know that the dealers there appreciate it, and the dealers everywhere appreciate it. So it's an important.
Well, thank you. Yeah. And, we think this is an important issue.
Oh, without a doubt.
Manufacturers shouldn't compete against their own dealers. It's just that simple.
That's right. That's right. No question. Brian Maas, President of the California New Car Dealer Association. Thank you so much. And until next time, stay well.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks for watching Inside Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick.